If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined momentarily by one of our good friends, Rocco Miller. He does great work over at Bracketeer.org. We're going to be talking a lot about new coaches today in college basketball, which ones stand out to him, how these guys coming from the NBA to college basketball are becoming a little bit more of a theme, how we saw BYU be able to utilize this last year, how so many teams are trying to adopt this model, some of these guys coming up for the D2 to the D1 ranks, which ones of them are going to be able to have success, which power conference coaches that are in year number one are going to be able to have success as well. So we're going to be chatting about that and so much more. So that is going to be a lot of fun with Rocco Miller, and that's going to be a very simple podcast today as we really aren't getting a lot of news and notes with regards to transfers in college basketball. So going to be having a lot of two-part chats here moving forward, and we're going to be getting more conference previews. I plan on doing the Big Sky sometime next week. Gonna try to get things squared away with the Big South eventually as well. So that's on the docket for myself. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter. So per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today. Everything is powered by EdgeBoost. EdgeBoost is making sure that bettors are able to access the funds that they are so rightfully deserving of at any time of day. That you're able to earn cashback rewards as you utilize EdgeBoost, and go to edgeboost.bet and type in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That'll get you a dollar for dollar match on your first deposit of up to $25. Now I'll chat with our good friend in Rocco Miller, who does an amazing job looking at college basketball all 12 months out of the year. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Rocco Miller, his first and last name, the number 8 all together. And Rocco, it's great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Greg. I think we're going to talk about some first-year head coaches today. Is that right?
Oh, that is correct, because I absolutely love some of these teams and what they've done in the offseason, because you do have some interesting cases. Like with Mike Bibby, I didn't know if I loved the hire at first, but with Shaquille O'Neal being the GM, obviously now they've got some talent. So I think that that's going to be one of the most fascinating teams in all of college basketball. But I know you've been looking at this as well as I have. Some of these guys that were at the Division II level, coming up to the Division I level, Lipscomb, they rolled the dice there. Denver, they rolled the dice there. Those are teams, especially at the mid-major ranks, that went to a lower level, brought in guys that are proven winners that I think could really be able to make some noise this season.
Yeah, I like those hires. And I think they've, in the last handful of examples, starting with Grant Leonard at Queens and a couple of other great examples here with obviously the big one, Ben McCollum at Drake. There's really no reason not to. I think the trend should only accelerate. I love to see Gus Arginal land that UC Riverside job late in the process. You also have Andy Bronkema over at Central Michigan. So again, there's a nice wave of D2s breaking through and getting into D1. Then you've got another wave of guys more from the younger Moneyball era, if you will, with Zach Chu, 32 years old, coming from the chief of staff and strategy position at SMU, getting the Radford job. But you make that hire if you're Radford because of all the different angles and analytics and a kind of a newfound bag of cash, really, for the Highlanders. They're forecasted 126, right next to fellow new head coach Flynn Cameron and the heavily resourced High Point Panthers. So I feel like that's very intriguing to have two new head coaches with the two best rosters in the Big South. Can they survive and outcoach and outsmart guys like Mike Morrell, who's proven at UNC Asheville, and other great coaches in that league? I think that'll be fascinating. I think it's also very similar in the Metro Atlantic, where controversially Dan Garrio brought in from the NBA ranks another young, sharp, Moneyball type of mind, kind of on an NBA head coaching course, swings over to mid-major basketball, takes over the Gales program, and they are projected talent-wise per Torvik to be the favorites. I'm fascinated by all this because these guys haven't been through the ringer or the wars or even around college basketball quite yet. You could say the same from the Mike Bibby example as well. And now they're getting thrown into guys like Joe Gallo from Merrimack, who's just got that tricky zone, and they're going to be really tough to beat. You also have Sienna, and Jerry McNamara is only in his second year, but they bring back a lot of guys, and I really like that Sienna team in that league. So this wave of more Moneyball style, younger coaches, influx of cash to build a roster are fascinating, and I think similarly in the Sun Belt with Ryan Pannone at Arkansas State, getting the opportunity to take over with the program, maybe you could argue its highest point. Brian Hodgson was able to be basically right there at the top of the league both years he was there, certainly the most talented team. And Pannone came in and kept the train rolling. A lot of talent coming to Jonesboro. Certainly look like a top 3 team on Sunbelt paper right now. So fascinated by these different types of hires and fascinated by a bunch more too. So we can go into some more categories here.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned the former NBA guys as well, because how much do you think that what we saw out of BYU last year was really the influencer here? Because they did a nice job looking at Oklahoma City Thunder staff thinking, hey, you know what, this could work out there in the Big 12. It very clearly did. And you mentioned it was Zach Chu. He was actually part of the Indiana Pacers coaching staff / their just game resources in general over the last few years. You mentioned Gary Oak going on over to Iona. Those are guys I think are so interesting because I feel like they got blazed a path by what we saw with BYU a season ago.
It's becoming not only a trend, but it's on purpose because so much of the sport now is a lot of what you deal with in the NBA, whether it's contract. All these players, especially at the highest level of college basketball, are getting contracted. And in some cases, now looking at multi-year contracts. How do you negotiate that? How do you manage your spending budget? How do you know when to offer, what to offer, how much to offer? Those are all really, really critical aspects of the job. And now you see Iona and Radford, again, they haven't played a game yet under these guys, but right there at the top of the ladder in their respective leagues in terms of the talent coming in via the portal and recruiting and other avenues as well, D2 and JUCO and international. But I find all that fascinating. I think when you look at Laux getting hired at Florida State, it's very similar, just a much higher level job, of course, with being able to balance all that out. And I'm curious to see how he'll do in year one. There's so much of this going on now, and there's good reason for it because it's a whole different job. Just the amount of organization. Your program is now an organization officially. The term student athlete should probably be burned into the ground. It's more of an athletic student. Obviously, you want to see all these kids get their degrees and make it through college, but a lot of them, they'll get into pro basketball sooner than that and have to come back and finish school when they're older. And that's just what it is. It is what it is. And guys like Will Wade at NC State, probably already been doing that stuff. And now there's just some more formality to it for him. And the list goes on, right? So I do think that trend, and especially with some early success with BYU and Coach Young, there's no reason for that to slow down.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And I thought that was one of the more interesting trends that we saw of the season. It's Rocco Miller. He does such great work over at Bracketeer.org. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And while I absolutely love that, you also talked about something with regards to the former players. Mike Bibby, that I think is one of the most curious cases out there, but also Charlie Ward as well, because I really like that hire for Florida A&M just because he is a guy from Florida State. I think that he's got some inroads. He certainly has cut his teeth in basketball. He knows about pretty much every sport because we know what he was able to do out there on the gridiron as well. I think that those are two very interesting hires, and that for Bibby, I didn't love the hire at first, but I'm looking at the roster that he's getting, and I'm starting to feel a little bit more bullish. And when you got Shaquille O'Neal in the fold as well, that helps out a little bit as well. I do think that Charlie Ward going on over to the SWAC is going to be very helpful.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? Because sometimes you have a huge name like Mike Bibby or Charlie Ward, for example, your legacy goes on forever. That certainly is attractive for the ages of the parents of these players to lure them in. And obviously some of those connections they have across the entire sport of basketball are very strong. And then, maybe like the next tier down, but certainly a college basketball legend, Ali Farouk Manesh, is the new head coach at Colorado State.
Yes.
No bigger March Madness legend than him, in my book at least. He's been actually groomed to be a college basketball head coach. Really excited for his opportunity. And again, if that guy goes into a living room in the state of Iowa, his peers that are parents of these kids now.
Or any haters of Kansas.
I mean, how easy is that recruiting going to be? Everybody loves Ali Farouk Manesh. So phenomenal stuff there. And there's some good amount of former players that can use that to sway kids over, obviously gather the respect of the parents and galvanize a culture. So much of the opening press conference you hear on all these pressers is building a culture, and it is important. And it's an overused word for sure, but it's also like, if you're taking over a place like a Sacramento State that has not really won much at all, almost any time in my lifetime, then you really got to shake things up big time. And that's totally worth the roll of the dice, in my opinion.
Yep, I do agree with you. And I think that it's going to be really interesting to see what these guys are going to be able to do moving forward. And then there are just some of these moves that I do think that it's going to be very fascinating to see what they do. And there are just some coaches that when I take a look at what they've been able to do this offseason, they've really surprised me. Like, I think that there's a lot of optimism to be had out there in the SWAC. There were quite a few coaching moves out there. I want to touch upon those on the flip side. Additionally, I do want to get Rocco's thoughts on just a few guys in general that he's really feeling bullish on for the upcoming season. Maybe we're not talking about them enough. We're going to talk about some power conference coaches. We're going to talk some more mid-majors and so much more on the flip side right here on Cus Cus Hoops with myself, Greg Hughes Peterson, now a part of the Beast and Family Podcast.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cus Cus Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Great to be rejoined by Rocco Miller, who does great work over at Bracketeer.org. Follow him on Twitter/X at Rocco Miller, his first and last name, the number 8 all together. And Rocco, we were leaving off talking about some of these coaches I'm starting to feel bullish on, and we left off because I was going to get into the SWAC, and I think for the SWAC, there's a lot of reason for optimism in this conference. I look at Grambling right now as being a team on the up and up. Patrick Crary did an incredible job in year number 1 over at Florida A&M, a guy that I'm sure that you know as well as I do, cut his teeth at the NAIA level for St. Mary's, not out there in California, out there in the great state of Texas. Now he's going to be bringing in a 20-point per game scorer from Canisius that should be able to help them out quite a bit. They've done a great job here in the transfer portal, and then this is obviously a guy that's returning, but I just am feeling really good about the SWAC because Bethune-Cookman under Reggie Theus, another one of those former players, he's brought back the guys that were essentially there 2 years ago in Zion Harmon and company, and I think that there's actually a lot to be excited about for the SWAC this year.
I think so. I mean, I think there's at least 5 quality teams. I'm right there with you on Patrick Crary. I had an opportunity to spend a few days last summer when he was in the turmoil with Florida A&M to really try to understand that whole situation, his controversial 1-year contract, and his whole goal last year. And I could hear it in his voice on the phone calls we had together. It was like to just go out and win a bunch of games and get out of there. And he did exactly that. And now he's staying in the league with Grambling, a team, that's had more success, obviously getting to the NCAA tournament just 2 years ago with Dante Jackson. Of course, Dante going over to Alabama A&M is very intriguing as well. Patrick Crary, for those that haven't gotten familiar with him yet, is extremely well connected nationally and, of course, in the Southeast region. So as long as he's a head coach, and I expect his career to continue to ascend beyond Grambling over time, but his connections, and you can see how big his following is going to do really, really well for him. And his chip on his shoulder and his motivation to prove everybody wrong, I don't foresee slowing down. I think that carries over to the team, that carries over to some of the performances, and it should carry over to March, most importantly. So I think wherever Grambling finishes the regular season, I think they'll be dangerous in the SWAC tournament due to all of that. Southern's got a good amount of talent yet, and so does Jackson State coming back. And I agree with you on Bethune. And Texas Southern's getting a year older for the most part. A lot of those guys were there last year. So those are the 5 I look for just based on everything coming back on paper. I do know Coach Jackson at Alabama A&M is not going to go down without a fight. He's a really fun coach to play for. I think part of the reasons they're so low still in the projection, I think they're 309 as I look at it right now, is they're missing 6 scholarship guys. So as soon as he gets the team finished, they've already got a really good transfer from New Hampshire in Sammy Pissis, who played really well, almost 16 points a game up there in the America East. He's got Karan Davis, who is a key contributor for the Raging Cajuns in his time there. And James Flippin is following him from Grambling. So is Gabe Kinsey. So we know that so far, but I know just in general, Dante is going to find some talent. His system is so fun to play in. He does a great job of recruiting the right athletes to come together and play together and make it an enjoyable experience. It's much different than most of the programs down there.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And I think that it's going to be really fun to see what we get in that conference in general. I think that they have done things oh so right. And I want to open it up to you a little bit as Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. We've talked about a few really good hires and we've talked about some interesting hires. What's just one or two that you take a look at and maybe there's not a lot of people are talking about the hire, but you just feel like that program got it right and you just feel like they are going to be on the up and up and able to surprise some people this year?
Yeah, good question. It's pretty specific. I mean, I think overall, my 2 surefire hires, just no-brainer, best 2 hires in the whole cycle at the power level that will make a lot of noise and have a chance to go really deep in March are clearly Iowa and NC State. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind those are the 2 best hires with Ben McCollum and Will Wade, just complete program changers with Bennett Sturts going to Iowa and with the players that Will Wade has brought in at NC State, led by Darian Williams. Sky is the limit for both. I would not be shocked if Iowa either won the Big Ten or won the Big Ten tournament. And also, whether they're seeded 1, 2, 3, or 6 in March Madness, making a run to the Final Four. NC State, similar across the board there. So I'll just start with that. But I do think surefire from the next cut of teams, South Florida with Brian Hodgson, just complete home run. That guy should be a Power 5 coach. His recruiting is through the roof. Obviously, you could pick apart his X's and O's, but he's going to get stronger in that area as time goes on. South Florida's roster entering the season, many could argue, is already better than Memphis's. They will get some first-place votes, I'm pretty confident, when the American preseason poll comes out. I thought with VCU, just dealing with the transition, to be able to bring in Martelli Jr., and Martelli Jr. goes out and brings in his brother Jimmy. They got a great coaching staff and a ton of talent at VCU. And given the circumstances and how respected Brian Odom was and all the talent he brought in, surefire that VCU is going to be competing for an Atlantic 10 title. And I also just think from that same league, Fordham, given their circumstances, the bizarre NCAA penalties, which were completely unnecessary. They hit a home run with our guy Mike Magpayo. Yes. He's going to win a bunch. He's going to win a bunch of games he's not supposed to win. Whatever Fordham's expectations are, he's going to outperform them. I'm very confident of that. And I'm also, there's 5 other teams where, I guess I'll just say 4 because I do think no matter what New Mexico does this year, they're going to be performing better by the end of the year than maybe their expectations will call for. Eric Olin's not only an awesome coach and proved that here with these last couple of UC San Diego teams, but he's brought in an awesome staff. He brought a couple guys with him from La Jolla, but added in Mike Roberts, who's a longtime veteran, NC State, Cincy assistant. They've got a great staff there. Wilder from UC Irvine is on the staff as well. He left after being at UC Irvine for so long. And so just to bring that mix of probably the 2 best Big West programs into that New Mexico style of play, both offense and defense, they're going to be a pest to play. The Pit is amazing, and I can't wait for that. Now, I will add a few more for you because I think these 4 teams have brought in a really nice mix of talent. One of them, I think, has a very good and proven coach. And then the other 3, the coaches really kind of have to prove it. So the one proven coach out of this group is Nico Medved at Minnesota. And I do think he's brought in a good amount of talent, and they could surprise some teams this year. So that kind of hits the question you asked me on both fronts. Now, the problem is Big Ten from top to bottom is an absolute gauntlet. And it's really unfair to Nico to just come out and say he's going to be 500 or over 500 in that tough of a league. But they will knock off some teams that nobody expects them to. That program is in the best hands it's been in for a very long time with Nico there. And who knows, maybe they will go over 500 and be in March Madness with the rest of these guys. The other 3, like I said before, coaches all have to prove it. It's Josh Pastner at UNLV. It's Jai Lucas at Miami, and it's back to Farouk Manesh at Colorado State. But I do think the players that those 3 have brought in, based on their level of college basketball, they have a huge upside on all three. If things don't go according to plan, how will those coaches adjust? Pastner's been through the wars before. He's got a good staff, but like it's his first year at UNLV. The pressure gets weird there. You know that better than anybody,
Yes.
Greg. You live there. In Miami, we saw what happened last year when things didn't go the way they planned it. That's a huge challenge potentially for Jai Lucas. Colorado State, I think, will be very stable. They have such a great family atmosphere. I'm just curious, how big can they win here this first year with Baruch Manesh?
Yep, I'm right there with you, and I agree on Josh Pastner. It just felt like he got done a little bit wrong when he was over at Georgia Tech because, he did everything that he could for that program, and we've seen them mire mediocrity for a little bit of a while, so I think that he's going to be able to do a good job. In Memphis, when he was over at Memphis, they canned him for Penny Hardaway. It's not like they've really elevated ever since then, so I'll say that, and I do think that he's going to be able to have himself a nice year. I'm so glad that you mentioned Jai Lucas as well. A little bit of strange dynamic over there in Miami as well, but I think that he's going to come in, hold down the fort, do an amazing job, and yes, those Big West coaches, they are going to be coming up very big, in my opinion, just like you always do, Rocco. You're so amazing when it comes to gauging college basketball all 12 months out of the year. I know that over at Bracketeer.org, you guys are working on some big things, and I know you're keeping your finger on the pulse of everything that's happening. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, appreciate all the kind words, Greg, as always. Yeah, Bracketeer.org is the website for all your bracket forecasting needs and non-conference scheduling needs. This weekend, the SEC page has finally gone live. We spent a lot of extra time to make sure we added all the new updates from places like Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Missouri, and LSU, to name a few. So all those are in there, and you'll see that by the time you hear this podcast. And then by next week, the Big Ten page will be available, and we'll get through the Power 5 by the end of June. So excited to roll those out just so you have a one-stop shop. If you're curious about what's going on with somebody's schedule, how many more games they need to get, maybe find out about a game you didn't know about. And then also, we're working really hard on the site, doing a lot more coming up this next season. Obviously, we're at .org, so we don't do anything for subscription or pricing. But if you do feel obliged to donate or contribute to the site, we really appreciate all the support. There's a support button right there at the top of the page for you to contribute, and we appreciate those. And then on Twitter /X and also Blue Sky, I'm at Rocco Miller 8. Constant stream of information coming in, mostly schedule announcements, some other information there. And so anything else that's coming around the corner, be sure to follow me on social media there.
And Rocco doing such an incredible job being able to gauge this great game of college basketball. And for anyone looking at scheduling, he is second to none on that front as well here in this offseason, where we are looking to be able to get to October. We're looking to be able to get to November. And Rocco, all 12 months of the year, he's on the grind. Big thanks to Rocco for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks once again to Rocco for joining me in the last few segments for a great in-depth chat. I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.